Sire, Monsieur le Président du Sénat, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs les sénateurs, Mesdames et Messieurs les députés, Mesdames et Messieurs, pour que la présidente de l'Assemblée nationale prenne la parole dans l'hémicycle du Sénat, il faut un grand événement. Et c'est en effet un moment historique que nous vivons et un grand honneur que vous nous faites, Votre Majesté, qui connaît bien la France, mais qui y vient pour la première fois en tant que souverain du Royaume-Uni de Grande-Bretagne et d'Irlande du Nord. Cette visite se devait de comporter une dimension parlementaire, car il faut le reconnaître, si le Royaume-Uni réclamait des royalties sur l'idée du Parlement, toutes les démocraties du monde lui seraient redevables. En France, dès le siècle des Lumières, le partage du pouvoir entre exécutif et législatif fait l'admiration des esprits éclairés. Si Montesquieu théorise la séparation des pouvoirs, il en observe la pratique de l'autre côté de la Manche. Et c'est aussi à Londres que Voltaire puise l'inspiration de ses lettres anglaises. Mirabeau, quant à lui, plusieurs fois victime de l'arbitraire royal, vénère tout particulièrement l'habeas corpus britannique. Et c'est donc sous le titre d'Observation d'un voyageur anglais qu'il publie sa critique des prisons d'État françaises. Dans ce livre, il crédite nos voisins, vos sujets, d'un plus grand respect des droits de l'homme que cette nation a si glorieusement appris. Allusion évidente à la Glorious Revolution de 1688. Lui-même publie son pamphlet un siècle plus tard, en 1788. Et si l'année suivante, le même Mirabeau défie le roi de France en lui opposant la volonté du peuple incarnée par la première Assemblée nationale, c'est tout simplement qu'il veut acclimater en France le modèle britannique de monarchie constitutionnelle. Finalement, ce sont presque les Anglais qui firent la Révolution française. La famille régnante n'était pas d'accord et la France évolua vers un autre système, la République, née le 21 septembre, il y a 231 ans, jour pour jour. Ainsi ont toujours vécu nos deux peuples, s'observant, s'influençant, longtemps rivaux, mais depuis plus.
So our two peoples have been watching one another, influencing one another, have for many years been rivals, but for more than a century have always been allies to defend democracy and human rights. The different commemorations we have recall this. Next year, in 2024, we shall be celebrating the 120th anniversary of the Entente Cordiale and the 80th anniversary of the Normandy landings. And as Vera Lynn sang, we shall meet again. We shall meet again to continue to seal this compact of friendship and the long partnership which has united us on everything essential. Today, war has returned to European soil, and we can see threats to the most fundamental values by illegal and illegitimate use of force. Our two countries, once again, are together on the same side, the side of international law and respect for human rights. As two permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, as two members of NATO, as two influential democracies capable of getting on, we can see that this is important in a world which is subject to so many destabilizing forces and so much misinformation. Now, as a woman, as the first female president or speaker of a French Parliamentary Assembly, I would like to applaud the memory of the British women who, earlier than was the case in France, got people's minds changing so that they had the same rights as the other half of the human race. So I would like to think now of the English suffragettes who won their cause as early as 1918. And I want to say that when the French observed these British women and their commitment and their civil sense of responsibility, and particularly in the challenges of war and the Blitz, we can say that that perhaps influenced General de Gaulle to sign the ordinance on the 21st of April 1944, which finally gave French women the right to vote. It was also in London during the war that a young Frenchman who had joined La France Libre, the Free French Forces, who discovered that you could buy contraceptive products in the pharmacies. And this was an opportunity for women to control the birth of children. His name was Lucien Neuwirth. He was a future member of the lower house and the upper house of Parliament here. And in 1967, the contraceptive pill was legalized in France. So at a time when we can see that women's rights are being challenged and jeopardized around the world, that this is an important episode to recall. Freedom cannot be divided up into parts. We are either free or we are not, and we want to be free in every possible aspect of life. Your Majesty, our two democracies shall continue to move ahead towards our common ideal of freedom and respect for human dignity. Each democracy does it in its way, at its own pace, but always hand in hand when we have to stand firm. I know that together we shall move ahead and will have the world move ahead for the environment and biodiversity, and we know that you are personally committed to this and have been ever since your youth. This is a major challenge, it's a major issue for the millennium, and we know that Marianne and Britannia will remain two sisters together. As Winston Churchill said at the House of Commons, the Almighty, in his infinite wisdom, did not deem it fitting to create the French in the image of the English. And he also said, France and Great Britain found their way to freedom by very different paths. But as long as they fight together, as long as they have a common cause, it will be very dangerous to provoke them and very difficult to beat them. Your Majesty, it is impossible in the space of just a few minutes to summarize centuries of life as neighbors and as partners in so many occasions. But I know that we understand one another and we shall continue to work for a common cause. Our two countries agreed to restore the wonderful Bayeux Tapestry, and we know that there will be an enthusiastic pursuit of this first comic strip in history. And that's why, at the moment of your visit, I am proud and pleased to say, on behalf of the French Parliament, welcome to France. Madam Speaker of the Lower House of Parliament, Foreign Secretary, Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Commonwealth and Development Affairs, Ambassadors, dear members of Parliament, Your Majesty. This is an unprecedented moment that we are experiencing here with Your Majesty as you honor us with your presence in the Senate chamber, where we have the French Parliament represented. For the first time in the centuries of history of our two countries, a British sovereign will be speaking to the French Parliament, with both chambers assembled together and with all the different political parties. Now, please allow me to extend a welcome to the Speaker of the Lower House and to all the members of the Lower House who are seated here today next to your senator colleagues. I also have the pleasure of extending a welcome to the members of the House of Commons and the House of Lords who have joined us this morning. Your Majesty, you wanted to make the public speech, the one public speech that you will be making here on your state visit here at the French Parliament. This shows the esteem that you have, the esteem you have for the partnership between the oldest parliamentary nation and the French parliamentary system. From habeas corpus to the Bill of Rights, the United Kingdom opened the path for the modern parliamentary system. There was, for example, Chateaubriand, who attended British sessions of Parliament and wrote in his memoir,
La liberté contenue dans les limites de l'ordre semblait se débattre à Westminster. Fin de citation, Chateaubriand. La démocratie parlementaire est, j'en suis persuadé, le plus sûr antidote pour juguler les passions politiques. Et entre nos deux pays, c'est bien de passion dont il s'agit. Parfois ennemis, souvent alliés, longtemps concurrents, le Royaume-Uni et la France ont destin liés. Dans les heures sombres, le Royaume-Uni fut un refuge pour tous les Français contraints à l'exil. Il fut même un temps, en juin 1940, où la capitale de la France s'était en quelque sorte transportée à Londres pour édifier ensemble une digue commune au totalitarisme et à l'empire de la brutalité. Dans l'adversité se réalisait, après bien des tumultes, la vision prophétique de Victor Hugo, qui a siégé ici, sur ces bancs. L'Angleterre, toujours, sera sœur de la France, écrivait Victor Hugo. Aujourd'hui, alors que nous nous apprêtons à commémorer au printemps prochain le 80e anniversaire du débarquement en Normandie, le destin du Royaume-Uni demeure intimement lié au continent européen. Le Brexit, sire, n'y a rien changé.
For security in Europe. The United Kingdom and France are two nations with military tradition, and your country has never been invaded, well, except for William the Conqueror, who was French before his time. And the United Kingdom and France have had many challenges, but have always respected one another. Since the Entente Cordiale, which is almost 120 years ago, we have stood together side by side. Our nations are faithful to their vocation and have provided support for Ukraine, which has been attacked and invaded. Your Majesty, you have followed the example of Queen Elizabeth II, who visited the Senate on her state visit in 2004. But in addition to the respect we show to the Queen, I would also like to applaud the fact that we can see there is a tribute being paid to the different parts of the Republic, and the British sovereigns have travelled through these different parts of France, and they are represented here by the Senate. We have a tribute here to the diversity of different regions and landscapes which you are so interested in, and which are one of the great causes of our time. Local authorities in our two countries have formed so many bonds between themselves and are the soundest basis of our friendship. Through these different regions, we can see the genius of a nation being forged. This idea is not mine. It comes from the most French of British historians, Theodore Zeldin, who wrote in the History of French Passion that it was through such a genius that a nation was forged. And we can see that it was a British historian of great talent who managed to decipher the ins and outs of French passion. Your Majesty, there are very few European countries that, like the United Kingdom and France, have managed to maintain the same aspiration to see the world as an overall entity and to have links built on solidarity with the weakest countries. We can observe that with greater divides between North and South, this only serves ambitions for power, and neocolonialism is the practice of predatory states and not of the colonizing powers of the past. Repentance is an arm and must not divide. France and the United Kingdom have the means to offer a different horizon with different approaches and safety. The time has come to bring together the great families of the Commonwealth and of Francophone countries so that we can forge our ambition with the common language or common languages. Now we can see what Winston Churchill said. The more you make progress in French, the more you understand my English. And I must say that that suits me very well, given my level of English. Your Majesty, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II stated in 1996, on the occasion of another state visit, which was that of President Chirac, who had gone to London, and she said, while we may not drive on the same side of the road, it is equally true that we are moving ahead in the same direction. And such wit, which we see as such typically British humour, shows this it's very key truth here. We can follow different paths. We often follow divergent paths, but there is a constant element which defies any logic or any geographical aspects. We can see that London always brings us back to Paris, and Paris always takes us back to London. So this is a French Cartesian spirit paying tribute to the humour and wit of the British. Your Majesty, through the parliamentarians here this morning, the entire French nation is here to listen to you. President of the Senate, Speaker of the Lower House, dear Senators, dear members of the Lower House, thank you 1,000 times over for your very moving messages. I am flattered to have been invited here by the presidents of the two chambers to speak here at this illustrious setting, which can be seen as the upper house of French Parliament since 1789. I am well aware that I am visiting before the official resumption of the two sessions of Parliament, so I must apologize to have interrupted your holidays. This is why I am very moved to see you present here today. Your long-lived democracy can be seen in the long friendship which brings our nations and peoples together. Our partnership is built on a shared experience, and it is of vital importance as we face the challenges of the world. Quite simply, the United Kingdom shall always be one of the closest allies and one of the best friends of France. Yesterday, my wife and I started our visit at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. There we commemorated all those who died to defend the freedom which is so dear to our two countries. In the heart of this great nation, we paid silent tribute, standing together in solidarity, side by side with you, as our country stood side by side so often in the past.
As the golden thread that binds our nations. Quand ma mère est décédée l'année dernière,
when my mother died last year, my family and I were greatly moved by the tributes made to her throughout France. This morning, I reread the very moving messages of condolence which Your Excellencies and the Presidents of the two Houses of Parliament wrote at the time. You described the late Queen, Her Majesty, as the embodiment of British democracy with true dignity and in all permanence. I cannot describe just how important these words for me and for my family. All I can do is thank you and thank the people of France for the great kindness you expressed to us and to all our people at a time of such sorrow. In the rich and complex tapestry of the relationship between France and the United Kingdom, the golden thread which my mother was shall always shine forth. I wish for her to continue to provide us with inspiration to weave further bonds between our two countries with determination, with hope, and with love.
envers la liberté et la démocratie reste d'actualité. Aujourd'hui, nos forces armées s'entraînent ensemble au sein de la force expéditionnaire conjointe franco-britannique, se déploient ensemble avec les troupes de maintien de la paix de l'ONU et par le Conseil de sécurité de l'ONU, le G7 et l'OTAN, assument ensemble une responsabilité jointe pour la sécurité européenne et mondiale. Aujourd'hui,
today, more than 80 years after we were fighting side by side for the liberation of Europe, we are once again up against an unjustified attack on our continent. Our determination and our alliance are more important than ever. Together we shall stand by the people of Ukraine with determined solidarity. Together we shall not move. Our determination shall not be moved. Ukraine will triumph, and our cherished freedom will prevail.
Have once more demonstrated the fragility of so much that we hold dear. Just as we stand together against military aggression, so must we strive together to protect the world from our most existential challenge of all, that of global warming, climate change, and the catastrophic destruction of nature. Jacques-Yves Cousteau a dit si sagement, pour la majeure partie de l'histoire, l'homme a dû.
For most of history, man had to fight nature to survive, but in this century, he's starting to realize that to survive, he must protect nature. This vision is even more relevant now in the 21st century. Despite the extent and severity of the challenges our planet is confronted with, it is encouraging to see that measures taken by our governments and citizens, and increasingly by the private sector, have been taken. I think that for a long time now, we can see that our companies have been playing an essential role, working in partnership and in harmony with our governments and our people. And they have invested billions to develop solutions which will make it possible to have a successful transition towards a sustainable world. This afternoon, with President Macron, I shall be meeting corporate heads of French and British companies and their collaboration, innovation, and investments in clean growth and the protection of our invaluable biodiversity are a key part of global leadership, which is so essential. I have been thinking about the opportunities that we have between members of the Commonwealth and the International Organization for Francophonie. I sincerely hope that there will be opportunities for future collaboration. For example, we could find a way of having greater cooperation for sustainable development.
Our two governments are working in partnership to address so many global challenges. And yet, as ever, it is our people who are the true driving force of our relationship. Our friendship and warm familiarity are fortified by each new connection between us. It is renewed by each newfound joy in the culture of the other, and each reminder of how much we share. Millions of us visit each other's countries every year, a joy that we are now rediscovering after the disruption wrought by the pandemic. Tens of thousands of British rugby fans are currently following their national team around France, enjoying the fantastic spectacle of the Rugby World Cup, my son and daughter-in-law among them. Even when our national teams are drawn up on opposite ends of the pitch, they do so with mutual admiration and a shared commitment to the rules of the game, on which I will say only pas de coup bas et que le meilleur gagne. And of course, hundreds of thousands of our fellow citizens have chosen to live their lives permanently in each other's countries. This vibrant exchange between our people makes us immeasurably stronger, happier, and more prosperous. Nos artistes continue.
Our artists are continuing to find inspiration for one another as they have always done it in the past. They are combining the old and the new, creating complex and enriching works. There are the unforgettable paintings of London by Claude Monet. The London fog, which was such a source of fascination for French visitors. Some of the earliest examples, and we can see more recent examples with the iPad works by David Hockney, where he has the changing landscapes in Normandy. There are also, for example, the innovative collaboration with the British designer Paul Smith and the Picasso Museum in Paris. We can see here that there is universal scope in our shared artistic traditions. In fact, at this very moment, my beloved wife is celebrating this artistic partnership by launching the first Franco-British Literary Award, which will be a prize for outstanding contemporary fiction works published in French and in English. And she's doing this at the magnificent French National Library.
My wife and I will visit Bordeaux, the first city to be twinned with a British city, Bristol, in 1947. This shared link is just one of a countless number of connections between our towns and cities, our communities, our businesses, and our educational establishments. It is our people, through all that they do together, who are writing each new chapter of our history, so that a more secure, more prosperous world might be the inheritance of the next generation. Our young people must, therefore, be at the heart of our shared endeavors. Ce matin, je me réjouis.
This morning, I'm pleased to see young people from the 19th arrondissement in Paris and Saint-Denis who have received support for starting professional work, and this is done through initiatives with clubs and different organizations. When we support our young people, we are investing in our future, and there will be many and many a return on this investment. President, Madam Speaker, senators, members of the Lower House. Just under 120 years ago, my great-great-grandfather, King Edward VII, gave a commitment on behalf of the United Kingdom for the Entente Cordiale, the links between our two countries. We could say that this link was sanctified by the extraordinary sacrifices of the past century and has been enhanced with each example of our joint work and vision. It is now in our hands. It has been passed on with great pride from father to daughter, from mother to son, as it has been through the different generations of my own family. For the time that I shall be granted to rule as king, I give a commitment to do everything I can, everything in my power, to strengthen the essential relationship between the United Kingdom and France. And today I would urge you to join me in this effort. Together, our potential is boundless. That is why we must cherish and maintain our entente cordiale. We must renew it for future generations so that it becomes, as I would suggest, it also becomes an entente for sustainability, so that we can have a more effective response to the emergency situation for climate and biodiversity around the world. We have a commitment to one another's and a commitment to the values which we share with such pride. It is a commitment inspired by the example of the past and which we are encouraged us to take on the huge challenges of the world around us now. As neighbors, as friends, as partners, and as allies, there is no challenge that we cannot take on, as we have taken on challenges so often in the past. Let us move ahead with hope and courage, and let us do it together. Thank you.
Ici, des applaudissements qui nous feraient rêver, Madame la Présidente et moi-même, dans nos hémicycles respectifs.
Et nous ne désespérons pas, Monsieur le Président.
In our different chambers, we'd love to have such applause now. Now, members of Parliament, please remain here while the Speaker of the Lower House and I accompany His Majesty, and we would like to thank him for being here this morning with the members of the Lower House and the senators here together in the chamber of the Senate. Thank you, Your Majesty.